There are 15 things sitting in your life that are quietly pulling money out of your pocket. Here is the uncomfortable part. You almost certainly pay for at least 7 of them, and you have never once questioned a single one. They do not feel like mistakes. They feel like the ordinary cost of being a functioning adult. That is exactly why they drain you. By the end of this, you will know which 7 are yours and what each one has truly cost you. A few of these numbers will sting. So let's start in your kitchen. Number 1, bottled water. Walk into almost any kitchen in America and you will find a case of plastic water bottles stacked beside the pantry, and the person who bought it genuinely believes they are getting something cleaner and safer than what comes out of the tap. They are wrong, and the marketing did its job. The Environmental Protection Agency holds public tap water to stricter, more frequent testing standards than the Food and Drug Administration applies to the bottled kind. A huge share of what you find in those plastic bottles is simply municipal tap water that has been run through a filter, sealed, slapped with a label showing a glacier or a mountain spring, and marked up to the moon. Look at the actual size of that markup, because it is staggering. A single bottle pulled from a convenience store cooler works out to somewhere between $7 and $12 a gallon. The water flowing from your own faucet costs a fraction of 1 penny a gallon. You are paying hundreds, and in some cases more than 1,000 times more, for the exact same molecule with a throwaway piece of plastic attached that you will hold for 90 seconds and discard. Americans toss more than 35 billion of those bottles every single year. Now take the everyday habit and run it forward in time, which is where the damage really lives. $3 a day, which is barely 2 bottles, quietly adds up to about $1,095 a year. A $20 filter pitcher and a single refillable bottle would replace nearly all of it, and the water would taste just as clean. And if you took that $1,100 a year and put it into a basic index fund instead of into plastic, at a normal long-term market return, over 30 years, it would grow past $110,000. That is the real price tag on convenience you could pour straight from your own sink. Number 2, premium gasoline in a car that only needs regular. This one feels responsible. It feels like you are taking care of your engine, treating the car to something a little nicer than the cheap stuff. The pump literally calls it premium, so surely it must be better. Here is what the testing actually shows when engineers put it under real scrutiny. ran both regular and premium fuel through engines that were designed for regular, carefully measuring horsepower, fuel economy, and tailpipe emissions across a range of conditions, and they found no meaningful improvement in any category at all. The word premium is doing something sneaky to your brain. Premium gasoline is simply higher octane, and octane has nothing to do with quality. It describes how strongly the fuel resists pre-ignition inside high-compression engines that were specifically built to need it. Pour it into an ordinary engine, and there is no extra power waiting to be unlocked, because the engine was never designed to use it. Roughly 70% of vehicles on American roads run perfectly on plain regular. And yet millions of drivers reach for the expensive button anyway, guided by nothing more than a vague feeling that pricier must somehow be kinder to the car. Estimated that this single misunderstanding drains American drivers of around $2.1 billion a year, across more than 270 million unnecessary fill-ups. For one household, premium typically runs about 50 cents more per gallon, which quietly tacks a couple $100 onto your annual fuel bill in exchange for absolutely nothing. There is one important exception worth respecting. If your owner's manual says premium is required, then use premium, because those engines genuinely depend on it and will run rough or knock without it. But for the vast majority of cars on the road, the manual says regular, so open the one sitting in your glove box. If it says regular, then the premium pump is just a more expensive way to travel the exact same distance, and the only thing it ever improves is the gas station's margin. Number 3, extended warranties. You are standing at the register buying a laptop, a television, or a refrigerator, and a friendly voice asks whether you would like to protect your purchase for just a few extra dollars a month. It sounds careful. It feels like buying peace of mind against some future disaster. In reality, you are looking at one of the most profitable products the entire store sells, and that profit is built directly on top of your fear of the unknown. Two quiet forces work against the extended warranty, and once you see them, you cannot unsee them. The first is that the manufacturer's warranty already covers the early window, the first months, and sometimes years, when the genuine factory defects tend to surface. The second is that the failures the extended plan covers usually arrive much later, if they ever arrive at all. And when something finally does break, the repair frequently costs less than you paid for the warranty in the first place. Retailers and their salespeople push these contracts so aggressively for a simple reason. The overwhelming majority of customers never file a single claim, which means the money you handed over simply evaporates into the store's bottom line. There is a cleaner way to handle the real risk that a product might break someday. Decline the plan, take the money you would have spent on it, and quietly set it aside in your own account as a self-funded repair fund. Most of the time, nothing breaks, and you keep every dollar. And on the rare occasion something does fail, you pay for the fix out of a pot of money that, across all of your purchases over the years, is almost always far larger than every warranty would have cost you combined. There is one narrow case where this logic flips. If a single repair would genuinely wreck you financially, and the item is known to fail expensively, a warranty can be reasonable insurance. But for a blender, a pair of headphones, or a mid-range television, you are simply prepaying for a repair you will probably never need at a price the store set to make sure it wins. Number 4, brand names when a store brand or a generic does the identical job. This is one of the most expensive habits hiding in plain sight on every grocery run, and it is built almost entirely on packaging, familiarity, and childhood nostalgia. Start with medicine, because there the gap is impossible to argue with. The Food and Drug Administration requires a generic drug to contain the same active ingredient in the same strength, the same dosage form, and the same route into your body, held to the same manufacturing quality standards as the brand name version sitting right beside it. The pain reliever in the plain store brand bottle is the exact same chemical compound as the one in the famous bottle that costs 3 times as much. In many cases, the brand name companies themselves manufacture the generics, and yet generics routinely cost around 80% less. That same logic runs straight down every aisle of the store. Store brand flour, sugar, canned beans, pasta, spices, trash bags, and cleaning supplies are very often produced in the very same factories as the national brands, wearing nothing but a plainer label. Quietly switching even part of a typical cart to store brands can shave roughly a quarter off your grocery bill. On an $800 monthly grocery spend, that is about $200 a month staying in your account, which comes to around $2,400 a year for products your family genuinely could not pick out in a blind taste test. You are not paying for better food. You are paying for a logo and a feeling, and both of those are completely free if you simply look one shelf over. The single exception worth keeping is the handful of items where you genuinely taste a difference and it matters to you. Your one favorite coffee or sauce. Pay up for those on purpose and let the store brand quietly win everywhere else. Number 5, the gym membership you are not actually using. There is zero judgment in this one, because nearly everybody has lived it. You signed up in a burst of genuine motivation, you went hard for about 3 weeks, And then real life quietly swallowed the habit whole. The average gym membership now runs somewhere around $60 a month, and roughly half of all new members stop showing up within the first 6 months, while that charge keeps hitting their card with perfect, indifferent regularity. By various industry estimates, the large majority of memberships go mostly or completely unused, and added together, Americans burn somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3 billion a year paying for buildings they have not set foot inside since the spring. Here is the quiet psychological trap underneath it. At some point, you stopped paying for fitness and started paying for an identity. That monthly fee buys you the comforting feeling of being the kind of person who belongs to a gym, and that single feeling is costing you over $700 a year. The money keeps leaving your account long after the motivation left your life. So if you have not used the membership in 2 months, cancel it without an ounce of guilt, and do not let the front desk talk you into a pause that simply restarts the bleeding a month later. Before you sign any new fitness contract, ask yourself one honest question. How many times last month did you actually do the thing you are about to pay for? A free walk around your neighborhood and a handful of bodyweight movements on your own living room floor will do more for your body than a plastic card that silently drafts your bank account in the dark while you sleep. Number 6, subscription creep. This is the slow, invisible leak that almost nobody tracks, precisely because each individual piece of it feels far too small to bother with. It builds in fragments. There is a streaming service you signed up for to watch one show, a music app, a cloud storage plan you forgot you upgraded, a meditation app you used twice, a fitness app, a news site, a meal kit subscription you meant to pause, and a free trial that quietly converted into $9.99 a month the second the trial ended. None of it ever feels like spending, because you never physically watch the money leave your hand. It simply dissolves out of your card on autopilot month after month, completely beneath your notice. Stack it all together, and the typical household is now carrying a pile of recurring charges that has crept far past anything they would ever consciously sit down and choose. The repair takes about 15 minutes, and it is borderline therapeutic. Pull up your last 2 bank statements and read every single recurring line out loud, one by one. You will discover at least a couple you completely forgot existed, and 1 or 2 you actively resent. Cancel those today. Trimming even $50 a month of dead, unwatched, unused subscriptions adds up to $600 a year, and invested steadily over a single decade at a normal market return, that small leak alone grows into more than $8,500. That is real money you were already spending every single month on a stack of things you had quietly stopped using and stopped noticing. A simple rule keeps it from creeping back. For any new subscription, set a calendar reminder for the day before the next charge hits, and make yourself redecide whether it has earned another month. Anything that cannot survive that small moment of attention was never worth keeping. Number 7, food delivery apps. The convenience here is completely real, and so is the steep layered tax you pay for it. A tax that almost nobody actually adds up before tapping the order button. When researchers carefully compared the exact same meal ordered through a delivery app against simply picking it up yourself, delivery came out roughly 80% more expensive once the menu markup, the service fee, the delivery fee, and the tip were all stacked on top of one another. That is about $9 of pure surcharge layered onto a single ordinary order. Money that buys you nothing but the privilege of staying on the couch. Now compare that same delivered meal against cooking something similar in your own kitchen, and the math turns genuinely absurd. You are paying somewhere around 600% more than the home-cooked version. The truly painful part of all of this is the frequency. A large share of Americans now order delivery once a week or more, often on pure autopilot at the end of a long day, without registering it as a real spending decision at all. A single weekly order at that kind of markup quietly runs close to $500 a year, handed to an app for the simple act of carrying food the last 2 miles to your door. There is an easy middle path that keeps most of the convenience while cutting almost all of the cost. Use the apps to browse and decide what you are hungry for, then call the restaurant directly and pick it up yourself. Same meal, same kitchen, same food, at a small fraction of the total. And for the nights when leaving, really is not an option. Batch cook a few simple meals on the weekend and stash them in the freezer, so the easy default in a tired moment is reheating something you already paid pennies for instead of tapping a button that quietly adds 80% to dinner. The convenience economy is built entirely on your exhaustion. The fix is having something easier and cheaper already waiting for you before the exhaustion hits. Number 8, carrying a balance on your credit card. This is the single heaviest item on the entire list, and it hides in plain sight because the card itself is not the villain. The card is a perfectly good tool. The balance you let roll from one month into the next is the quiet wealth killer. Americans are now collectively holding about $1.25 trillion in credit card debt, and the average interest rate on balances that are actually carrying a charge sits at roughly 21.5%, with brand new cards landing closer to 24%. Those rates are sitting near the highest levels ever recorded. Now watch carefully what numbers like that quietly do to a household. Carry just $1,000 for a single year at that rate, and it costs you about $220 in interest sitting on top of whatever you originally bought. Now let a balance of $5,000 sit there and pay only the minimum each month, which is what the statement gently nudges you toward. At that pace, you will stay shackled to that debt for more than 15 years, and you will hand the bank roughly $7,500 in interest alone before it is gone. You will have paid for that original $5,000 of stuff something like 2.5 times over. There is exactly one rule that diffuses this entire trap completely and permanently. Pay the full statement balance every single month. Do that consistently, and the interest rate printed on your card never touches you for even $1, no matter how high it climbs. Let a balance ride, and it quietly becomes the most expensive money most ordinary households will ever borrow. Number 9, the brand new car. Very few purchases feel as good and cost as much as driving a brand new car off the dealer's lot. And the cruel truth is that almost none of that cost shows up on the window sticker you negotiated so hard over. The average new vehicle in America now sells for around $49,000. And the moment you take ownership and pull into traffic, the meter starts running hard in reverse. A new car typically sheds about 10% of its value in the first month alone, and roughly a fifth of its entire value across the first year of ownership. On a $49,000 car, that first year by itself quietly vaporizes close to $10,000. Keep going, and within 5 years, most new cars have given up nearly half of everything you paid for them. That is around $24,000, gone for no reason other than the passage of time and the turning of the odometer. Nobody stole it, no accident caused it. The car simply stopped being new, and the market repriced it the instant someone else's keys touched it. A car, at its core, is transportation. A machine for getting you reliably from one place to another. A well-maintained used vehicle, one where some previous owner already absorbed that brutal first year of depreciation on your behalf, will carry you to the exact same destinations in the exact same comfort, and you get to keep the enormous difference in your own pocket. The new car smell is, dollar for dollar, the single most overpriced fragrance on the entire planet. If any of this is making you do quiet math in your head right now, That is the whole point, and it is genuinely a good sign. Hit subscribe so these breakdowns keep finding you, because I take apart exactly this kind of everyday money every single week. Now let's keep going, because the next one charges you a fee for the crime of running low on your own cash. Number 10. Bank overdraft and junk fees. Think about how strange this one truly is. Your own bank, the institution you trust to safely hold your money, has quietly built an entire revenue stream out of charging you small, steady, almost entirely avoidable penalties. The average overdraft fee now sits around $27 per slip. And the genuinely cruel part of the design is that they tend to cascade, hammering you several times in a single unlucky afternoon if a few transactions clear at once. Then there is the out-of-network ATM fee, now averaging almost $5 just to touch your own cash at the wrong machine, and the monthly maintenance fee, which can run anywhere from $5 to $16 purely for the privilege of the account continuing to exist. Taken one at a time, each of these looks completely trivial, hardly worth a second thought. Stacked across millions of households, they are enormous. In a single recent year, Americans paid more than $12 billion in overdraft and related fees alone. The genuinely good news is that this entire category is the easiest one on the whole list to drive straight down to zero. A large number of online banks and local credit unions charge no monthly maintenance fee at all, no overdraft fee, and many of them even reimburse out-of-network ATM costs. Switch to one of them, turn on a simple low balance text alert, and link a savings account as an automatic backstop, and these fees simply stop appearing on your statement forever. You should never have to pay your own bank for the basic privilege of letting it be your bank. Number 11. Buying cheap twice. There is an old idea sometimes called the boots theory, and it quietly explains why being short on money is so brutally expensive in the long run. When cash is tight, you buy the cheapest version of whatever you need, because the cheap version is the only thing within reach in that exact moment. Then it wears out, so you go and buy it again, and then again after that. Picture a $40 pair of boots that falls apart roughly every year or two. Over the course of a decade, you might buy 5 separate pairs, spending $200 total while spending most of that decade walking around in boots that are halfway to ruined. A genuinely well-made $200 pair, by contrast, could carry you through that entire decade and keep your feet dry the whole way. The cheaper option was never actually cheaper. It simply sliced the cost into smaller, more frequent pieces so that you never quite notice the total leaving your wallet. This pattern shows up everywhere you look, in tools, in shoes, in kitchen basics, in anything you reach for constantly. The key word is constantly. For something you genuinely use every day, the only honest measure of value is the cost spread across its entire working lifetime. And one solid purchase made well almost always beats a long parade of flimsy replacements. The trick is having enough breathing room to buy the durable version in the first place, which is exactly why getting your foundation right matters so much. There is a real catch worth naming, though. This rule only applies to things you will genuinely use hard and often. It is not a license to buy the most expensive version of everything, because plenty of premium price tags are pure branding with no extra durability behind them. The honest test is simple. Will you use this thing constantly for years, and does the pricier option actually last meaningfully longer? When both answers are yes, buying once and buying well is almost always the cheaper path in the end. Number 12. The daily coffee and snack autopilot. This one gets mocked endlessly, and all the mockery completely misses the actual math. Nobody anywhere is telling you to never enjoy a coffee again. The waste is not the drink. The waste is the unconscious, automatic daily ritual, the $6 coffee and pastry you grab on the way into work without truly tasting either one 5 days a week. every single week for years on end. $6 a day across roughly 250 working days a year quietly adds up to about $1,500, slipping away in $3 and $4 fragments so small that your brain files every one of them under nothing at all. Now stretch that very same $1,500 a year across a 30-year working career and invest it at a normal long-term market return. It quietly becomes more than $150,000. That is a genuinely life-changing sum, built entirely out of a habit you stopped noticing years ago. None of this is an argument for a grim, joyless, deprived life. It is an argument for making the coffee a deliberate choice instead of an expensive reflex. Brew most of your cups at home, where a genuinely excellent cup costs you well under $1, and then let the trip to the caf become the small, real pleasure it was always supposed to be, savored on purpose, rather than a default purchase you make on autopilot while half asleep and staring at your phone. The same exact logic applies to the vending machine snack, the gas station energy drink, and the impulse checkout candy. None of these are crimes. They are simply small, repeated, unconscious purchases, and the entire point of this list is that unconscious is the expensive part. The moment a purchase becomes a deliberate choice instead of a reflex, it almost always shrinks on its own. Number 13. Lottery tickets and scratch-offs. This is the one purchase on the entire list that is explicitly engineered so that you lose, designed by people who have run the precise math that you have not. In a single recent year, Americans spent about $104.7 billion on lottery tickets, which works out to roughly $321 for every adult living in a state that runs a lottery. And that spending is nowhere near evenly spread. The habitual players, who are concentrated heavily among lower-income households, often run through something like $2,500 a year, chasing a jackpot whose odds sit somewhere near 1 in 292 million. To genuinely feel a number that large, understand that you are far more likely to be struck by lightning and then struck by lightning a second time than to ever hit that top prize. The ticket is sold to you as hope, and there is honestly nothing wrong with a $2 daydream once in a great while. The real damage is in the routine, the steady weekly bleed treated as a strategy. That same $2,500 a year redirected into ordinary investments and left alone for 30 years would grow into more than $250,000 of actual, real wealth that belongs to you with certainty rather than to a 1 in 300 million fantasy. The lottery has always been a tax on not knowing the odds, and as of right now, you know the odds. If you genuinely enjoy the occasional ticket as cheap entertainment, give it a fixed tiny budget the same way you would a movie, and walk away when it is spent. The danger is never the rare $2 daydream. The danger is the steady weekly habit dressed up as a retirement plan. Number 14. Payday and cash advance loans. These products exist for genuinely desperate moments, the kind where rent is due tomorrow and the paycheck is still 4 days out, and that desperation is exactly what makes them so quietly devastating. A typical payday lender charges around $15 for every $100 you borrow, with the whole thing due in about 2 weeks. Borrow $300 and you are expected to pay back $345 almost immediately. $15 on a 2-week loan does not sound extreme on its face until you annualize it the way lending law actually requires, and it lands at an annual percentage rate of nearly 400%. Suddenly, even a credit card sitting in the low 20s looks downright gentle and friendly by comparison. The real trap, though, the one that swallows people whole, is the rollover. When that full balance comes due and you simply cannot cover it, the lender lets you pay just another fee to push the due date back, and then another fee after that. And the original $300 can quietly cost you hundreds in stacked fees, while the actual debt itself never shrinks by a cent. If you are ever truly cornered into a moment like this, understand that a small dollar loan from a credit union, a payment plan worked out directly with the original biller, or even one honest and uncomfortable conversation with family will almost always cost you a tiny fraction of what the payday storefront will. This is the most expensive money in all of America. And by design, it preys hardest on the people who can least afford to be preyed upon. Number 15. Whole life insurance sold to you as an investment. Let's be careful and fair here, because life insurance itself is not the waste at all. Protecting the people who depend on your income is one of the most responsible and loving things a person can possibly do. The waste lives in one very specific sales pitch, the one where a smooth advisor sells you a whole life policy as a brilliant 2-for-1 that ensures your family and builds your wealth all at the same time. Run the actual comparison and the costume falls right off. A term policy simply covers you for a set stretch of years and for the very same death benefit. Term can cost 5 to 15 times less than whole life. A healthy young adult might pay around $30 a month for a serious term policy that genuinely protects their family, while the whole life version of comparable coverage runs $300 a month or more, with a large chunk of that extra premium quietly feeding a slow-growing cash value account and, not coincidentally, the generous commission of the person selling it to you. The overwhelming majority of families come out dramatically ahead by buying the cheap term coverage they actually need and then investing the difference themselves in plain low-cost index funds. That gap, roughly $270 a month, invested steadily over 30 years at a normal market return, grows past $320,000, and every cent of it belongs entirely to you and your family rather than to an insurance product wearing the costume of an investment. So how many of the 15 turned out to be yours? Be genuinely honest with yourself, because nobody else is sitting here keeping score. If you landed somewhere around 7, you are completely, perfectly average. And if you counted 10 or more, please hear this clearly. You are not careless, and you are not bad with money. You were simply never handed the rule book in the first place. That, right there, is the single thread running through every item on this entire list. Notice what all 15 of them quietly share. Not one of them happened because you sat down and made some reckless, dramatic, obviously foolish decision. The bottled water, the streaming charges you forgot, the minimum payment, the shiny new car. Every one of them slipped in softly on autopilot as the default option that felt completely normal and reasonable in the moment you chose it. That is how money actually leaves the vast majority of households, not in one dramatic disaster, but in 100 small, quiet defaults that nobody ever taught you to stop and question. And that points straight at the deeper gap underneath all of it. Below the visible gap between what you earn and what you actually manage to keep sits a much quieter one. The gap between the basic financial rules you were always expected to somehow know and the ones anyone in your life ever genuinely taught you. We learned the state capitals and the multiplication tables, and then we got handed a paycheck, a credit card, and a car loan, with no instructions attached to any of them. Every single waste on this list is just a symptom of that one missing foundation, which is exactly why, if any of this hit home today, the most useful next step is not memorizing 15 things to avoid. It is finally building the base underneath them. I put together a full video that walks through financial literacy from the ground up, the genuine starting point for anyone who wants to stop leaking money by accident and start keeping it on purpose. It is the foundation that quietly makes every decision on this list feel obvious instead of confusing. Build that base first, and most of these 15 traps simply take care of themselves.